One pitch. Not two. Not three. Not a long, grinding at-bat that builds tension over 7 or 8 pitches before finally delivering a moment worth remembering. One pitch. That's all Shohei Ohtani needed. And not just any pitch. Not a mistake pitch from a struggling starter having a bad night. Not a fastball left over the heart of the plate by someone who doesn't belong in the same conversation as the elite. A pitch from Jacob deGrom. One of the most feared arms in the history of this sport. A pitcher so dominant at his peak that hitters would walk back to the dugout shaking their heads, not angry, not frustrated, just quietly amazed that another human being could make a baseball do the things he makes it do. And Ohtani hit the very first pitch he threw. Out of the park. His 5th home run of the season. First pitch. First encounter. One swing. The stadium didn't just react. It erupted. And somewhere across the baseball world, legends who have faced deGrom, who have watched deGrom, who know exactly what it means to hit his first pitch out of the park, went completely silent. Then one voice cut through the silence. He hit the first pitch off deGrom on their first encounter. Not a celebration. Not a cheer. Pure, unfiltered disbelief. And that reaction, that speechless, jaw-dropped, can't quite process what just happened reaction from people who have seen everything this game has to offer, tells you more about what Ohtani just did than any statistic ever could. Before we go any further, let's make sure we fully understand the weight of this moment. Because if you just saw the highlight, ball leaving the bat, crowd going wild, Ohtani rounding the bases with that calm, almost unbothered expression on his face, you might think it was simply a great moment in an already great season. It was not simply a great moment. It was something that players, coaches, and analysts will be talking about for years. Here's why. deGrom is not a pitcher you sit on the first pitch against. That's not arrogance or ignorance talking, that's baseball strategy at its most fundamental level. When you face an elite arm for the first time in an at-bat, the unwritten rule, the instinct that every experienced hitter develops, is to see pitches. Gather information. Let the at-bat breathe. Understand what he's working with that day, which pitches are moving, what his release point looks like, whether his fastball has extra life or whether his breaking ball is sharper than usual. You don't swing at the first pitch off deGrom. Unless you're Ohtani. Unless you've already done so much preparation before you ever stepped into the batter's box that the first pitch isn't a mystery to be solved, it's a confirmation of something you already knew. That's the part that leaves legends speechless. Not just the power. Not just the contact. The certainty. Here's a scene that will never make a highlight reel. Ohtani, the night before this game, sitting quietly with video. Not casually flipping through clips on a screen, the way someone watches television before bed. But studying. Deeply. Deliberately. The way a chess player studies an opponent's patterns before a match. He's watching deGrom's first pitch tendencies. Where he likes to start right-handed hitters. Where he goes when he's feeling dominant early in the count versus when he's trying to establish a secondary pitch. The specific movement patterns on his fastball when his mechanics are locked in versus when there's a subtle variation in his arm slot. He's not just watching. He's building a map. A mental picture so detailed and so thoroughly rehearsed that by the time he walks to the plate the next day, every possible scenario has already been lived through, calmly, clearly, without the adrenaline of the moment clouding his judgment. So when deGrom winds up and delivers that first pitch, a pitch that any other hitter in the lineup might take just to get a look, Ohtani already knows. He's already seen this. Already felt this. Already decided. And he swings. Crack. 5th home run. First pitch. First encounter. The preparation happened in private. The result happened in public. And the gap between those two moments, the hours of quiet, unglamorous work that made the swing possible, is precisely what legends recognize and what casual fans rarely fully appreciate. Let's talk about who deGrom is. Because the name matters enormously in the context of this moment. Throughout his career, deGrom has been the kind of pitcher who redefines expectations. The kind who makes you recalibrate what you thought was possible from a starting arm. His fastball, his slider, the deceptive ease of his delivery, these are the things that have made him one of the most discussed and most respected pitchers of his generation. Hitters don't take him lightly. They can't afford to. His first pitch isn't a gift. It isn't a feel-your-way-into the at-bat offering designed to set something up later. When deGrom throws that first pitch, he's throwing it with full intent. Full velocity. Full conviction. He is trying to get you out on pitch one. And the vast majority of the time, against the vast majority of hitters who have stood in that box against him, he succeeds. That's the context. That's what makes Ohtani's swing not just impressive but historically significant. Because you don't just swing at deGrom's first pitch and make contact. You certainly don't swing at his first pitch and hit it out of the park. And you absolutely, categorically do not do that on your first ever encounter with him, when you have no real-time information, no at-bat history to draw from, no lived experience of what his stuff feels like in person. Unless, again, you're Ohtani. Unless you've replaced real-time experience with something even more powerful. Preparation so thorough it becomes instinct. 5 home runs. Early season. Incredible pace. Legends not just impressed but speechless. And the baseball world is beginning to do what it always does when Ohtani starts a season this way, it starts doing math. Home runs per game. Projected totals. Historical comparisons. Names and numbers from the record books being pulled out and placed carefully next to Ohtani's current pace, almost cautiously, as if saying them too loudly might jinx something. But here's what makes those projections different when applied to Ohtani versus any other player in the league right now. With most players, a hot start raises a question: can he keep this up? With Ohtani, a hot start raises a completely different question: how far can he actually go? Because the history of his career doesn't feature the dramatic peaks and valleys that define most players' statistical stories. There is no evidence in his body of work that suggests this is unsustainable. There is no pattern of hot April followed by cooling May. There is no injury history that raises alarm bells about workload. There is only consistency. Relentless, almost mechanical consistency, built on a foundation of preparation and self-discipline that doesn't waver based on whether he's hot or cold, whether the team is winning or struggling, whether the spotlight is bright or the stadium is half empty on a Wednesday afternoon. 5 home runs is not just a number. It is a signal. And the legends hear it loud and clear. This point deserves its own moment because it's the part of the story that even serious baseball fans sometimes gloss over too quickly. First encounter. Ohtani had never faced deGrom before. No previous at-bats to draw from. No muscle memory of standing in the box against him. No real-time adjustment built from experience of facing his specific arsenal. In baseball, first encounters are supposed to favor the pitcher. Think about it from a pure information standpoint. The pitcher knows exactly what he's throwing and where. He's watched video of the hitter too, yes, but he's working from a position of control. He decides the pitch. He decides the location. He holds all the variables. The hitter, especially in a first encounter, is working to catch up. Reacting. Adjusting. Building information at game speed while simultaneously trying to survive elite stuff without getting embarrassed or giving away anything about his own tendencies. This is why first encounters are uncomfortable for hitters against elite pitching. This is why swinging at the first pitch in a first encounter is considered one of the highest risk decisions a hitter can make. This is why what Ohtani did, swinging at the first pitch in his first ever encounter with one of the most respected pitchers of his generation and hitting it over the fence, is the kind of moment that doesn't just leave legends speechless. It leaves them searching for a new framework to understand what they're watching. Because the old frameworks don't apply to Ohtani. They never have. He hit the first pitch off deGrom on their first encounter. That sentence. Read it again. It's not structured like a compliment. It's not delivered like a celebration. It's phrased like a question because the person saying it genuinely cannot reconcile what they just witnessed with everything they know about baseball and how it works. These are people who have spent their lives inside this sport, who understand its rhythms and its rules and its unwritten codes better than almost anyone on the planet, who have faced elite pitching themselves and know, in their bones, from experience, how hard it is to do what Ohtani just did. And they are speechless. Not because they haven't seen greatness before. They have. They've lived alongside it, competed against it, occasionally embodied it themselves. But what Ohtani is doing exists in a category that even greatness doesn't fully prepare you for. He is making the impossible look routine. He is turning moments that would define another player's entire career into Tuesday highlights that he acknowledges with a quiet trot around the bases before refocusing on the next at-bat. The legends react the way they do because they recognize something in him that transcends statistics and highlight reels. They recognize the work. 5 home runs. Record pace. An entire sport watching and waiting and projecting. You'd think that kind of attention would change something. Would add weight to each at-bat. Would make the plate feel smaller, the fastball feel faster, the margin for error feel tighter. For Ohtani, nothing changes. That is perhaps the most extraordinary thing about watching him operate under pressure. The external noise, the record talk, the legend reactions, the highlight coverage, the historical comparisons, simply does not penetrate the space where his preparation and his focus live. He walks to the plate the same way every time. He goes through his routine the same way every time. He studies the pitcher the same way every time. And when the pitch comes, whether it's a meaningless April game or a moment that will be replayed for the next 30 years, he responds with the same calm, prepared, deliberate swing. The pressure doesn't find him. Because there's no gap in his preparation for it to enter through. That's the poker face. Not an expression on his face. A completeness in his preparation. We are in the early chapters of the 2025 season. 5 home runs. A leadoff blast against an elite arm. A first pitch decision in a first encounter that left legends reaching for words they couldn't find. A record pace that has the baseball world doing math it's both excited and slightly terrified to complete. And Ohtani hasn't even fully warmed up yet. That's the thing about watching a player of this caliber in the early weeks of a long season. You're not watching the finished product. You're watching the foundation being laid. The rhythm being established. The tone being set, not just for himself, but for every pitcher who will face him between now and October, every opposing manager who has to build a game plan around the reality that one wrong pitch, in any count, at any point in the game, can disappear into the seats. Even the first one. Even against deGrom. Especially against deGrom. One pitch. That's all it took. First encounter, first pitch, one of the most respected arms of his generation, and Ohtani made it look like exactly what it was to him. An opportunity he had already prepared for. The legends will keep watching. The records will keep getting closer. The baseball world will keep searching for the right words to describe what it's witnessing. And Ohtani will keep doing what he's always done. Showing up. Preparing. Executing. One pitch at a time. He hit the first pitch off deGrom on their first encounter.